Paulavi, let me come in here. You know, in all of this, we need persons to drive them to fruition. So this kind of collaboration between the two countries, how much of training do you give or information sharing so that you can have personalities that can come build these institutions and make them vibrant?
Right. Well, I mean, in some ways, this is such a wide and deep relationship that personalities aren't really that important because there's so much going on across the board bilaterally. But I think the Binational Commission kind of by design recognizes what you're talking about, and it's, you know, it's important that U.S. businessmen invest. It's important that you know, students travel and all the rest on the micro level. But on a higher level, it's also important that the leadership, you know, the Nigerian leadership and the American leadership, get to know each other, develop strong working relationships. And for example, for the Binational Commission meeting that we're about to have in Abuja on August 15th, our Undersecretary of State, Wendy Sherman, will come out for that. She's one of the most senior diplomats in the American system. And so that will really give her an opportunity to get to know the Nigerian decision makers across the table from her firsthand. And so that actually is huge.
All right.
One of the things you mentioned is that the United States has, you know, a deep and wide relationship with Nigeria. But I mean, one thing that has happened, or people have noticed, is that every time the United States president has been to Africa at least twice now, and it would seem that, you know, Nigeria has been left out in the scheme of things. I mean, aside the youth meeting that he had with, say, Nigerian youths, you know, which we're a part of. What exactly do you think that the United States is trying to send a message to Nigeria, or is it that, you know, it's just not yet time for the U.S. president to visit?
Yeah, I get asked that question a lot, and really my message on that is real simple, and that is this is an important relationship to the United States. Nigeria is one of our most important partners on the continent, and whether or not the president chose to make a stop in Nigeria on this particular trip is irrelevant to the importance of this relationship that we have. And I'm glad that you did note that even though he didn't come to Nigeria, President Obama did take the opportunity to speak with Nigerian students, thankfully through Channels Television, to at least have some direct engagement with the people of Nigeria, if not the government of Nigeria.
I wanted to stay on transparency issue. You know, you talked about money, and when money is involved, well, we'll have to keep track of such spending. Do you have a kind of mechanism to know how these is spent judiciously for the purpose it's meant for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, on the American government side, with our assistance, we have very rigorous systems of control in place to ensure that our money is spent well. And it's also important to note that in almost all cases, it's not as if we just hand a check to the Nigerian government and wash our hands of the matter. Typically, we're working through implementing partners. Often those are Nigerian partners. Sometimes those are international partners. And these are organizations that are used to doing things to international standards and have reporting requirements, and there are monitoring and evaluation systems in place. So I'm pretty confident that the money we spend, say the $600 million or so a year we spend on health in Nigeria, I'm pretty confident that gets spent wisely.
What are you looking to achieve when you talked about Niger Delta? And, well, because now we're always talking about oil theft.
Right.
And so one would have thought that perhaps that should also come within your periscope.
Right.
Oil theft in Nigeria.
Well, I mean, of course, the problem down there is huge. And I think when we were initially looking at the Niger Delta, it was more in the context of the militancy and amnesty and what was happening there more on a political basis. It seems that a lot of that has shifted now more towards criminality as opposed to a political agenda. But certainly criminality that's incredibly impactful, and the figures that we hear, of course, are 150,000 barrels a day or more.
Yeah, some say 400 now.
Stolen, and that's your money. That's your viewers' money, and it impacts the security environment down there. It impacts the investment climate for the Niger Delta, but also for the country. If Nigeria has a reputation for that sort of theft. That's not in the interest of your country. And so obviously we're deeply concerned about that, and that's why we chose to have a separate working group on Niger Delta issues. We had a meeting last October of the working group in Port Harcourt, which was very interesting. Normally these sort of government-to-government conversations happen in capitals among diplomats, but we actually went to the Delta to have this conversation. And there was senior U.S. government officials there, there were senior Nigerian government officials there, but there were also Nigerian governors from the Delta, there were Nigerian civil society people there, and that led to a really rich conversation. And in some ways, some of the Nigerians were able to deliver some pretty tough messages to their federal government representatives in that meeting about issues of security, about the theft, about amnesty, about the environment. And it was a really useful conversation.
So do we expect some sort of action on environment?
Yes, sorry, Chamberlain, because I wanted to stay on that. I wanted us to look at this kind of partnership, which is another word for it is friendship. If the man who comes in to steal what is our money,
right,
and he takes that to another country, perhaps maybe destination could be the United States, is there a way that your government can actually intercept same and say, wait a minute, Nigeria, we just intercepted this stolen crude from your country, and you can hand them over or you try them on the country's behalf?
I'm not an expert in these matters, but my understanding is that once crude loads get mixed and oil is fungible, so once it arrives in say at a refinery in the United States, it's fairly difficult to establish the provenance. It's hard for somebody in the United States to know whether Nigerian documents are legitimate or not. I think it's much more practical and probably more appropriate to solve those issues of criminality at the place where the crimes are being committed rather than 10,000 miles away. And there's a lot of things that can be done and should be done in that area.
But is there any conclusions or suggestions concerning how to deal with environmental degradation in the Niger Delta?
Yeah, I mean, the environmental degradation in the Delta is absolutely disastrous. And I've been down there personally a number of times and have traveled to Ogoniland and other parts of the Delta and seen firsthand what's happening. And it's shocking, really. And I think the UN's report on that, particularly on Ogoniland, is pretty striking in that regard. The Nigerian government has said that it was going to take action. I think we have yet to see the full results of that commitment, and we're certainly willing to help in that effort. But so much of it comes down to the enforcement of Nigeria's laws. It comes down to fighting the illegal refining that is responsible for a lot of the more recent damage. And so again, international partners like the United States are certainly willing to help and certainly deeply concerned by what we've seen down there. But it is a Nigerian problem, and it's one for the federal government, for state government, for other interested parties to take action.
One of the accusations usually, talking about the environment, is that the standards that are upheld, say, in the mother countries of most of those international oil companies are not applied here. And, the United States has made it a point of duty to, demand accountability of its oil companies, so that if you're demanding a bribe or given a bribe here, you can actually be sanctioned back home.
Right.
Do you see a situation whereby those same standards can be applied when it comes to issues of the environment, so that if an oil company is applying certain standards back home and is doing something way less, in its children companies, say, outside the shores of the United States, they can still be held to account?
Well, I firmly believe that if an oil company is behaving irresponsibly or has not taken the legally required precautions in terms of protecting in the environment, they should pay the penalty for that. And we've certainly had numerous incidents in the United States, whether it's in the Gulf of Mexico or in Alaska, where we've had environmental problems because of oil spills. I would note, however, that there seems to be this sense in Nigeria oh, there's the international oil companies, and this is happening because they're doing this or that. And I do think it's important to remember that NNPC is a partner in all these projects. So it's not just an IOC problem. It's a Nigerian problem, a Nigerian government problem as well. And so it's something that those companies need to address collectively. And you know, good, careful regulation of that and enforcement of Nigeria's environmental requirements and laws is an important part of that.